Hello, my friends, welcome to Papa Mark's Place. I have a brilliant idea for you guys, and I think you're going to love it. I do. I don't like to brag on myself, but this really is a great idea, and you've got to try it. I got thinking I'm going to show you how to make a New York style bagel, which is not very far from the last bagel we made, but there's different things like barley malt and you use bread flour, things like that. So I'll tell you how to do it in a minute. But I got thinking, I like to mix it up in the kitchen and experiment, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to make a peach flavored bagel? But you can't put canned peaches or real peaches in it because there's too much moisture in them and it'll mess up the dough and they won't rise right and they won't cook right. So I thought of a different way. I'm going to make peach tea and put that in the bagels for flavoring. And then that got me thinking, when I was a teenager, I worked in this hoity-toity, uppity seafood place in Connecticut. And they used to serve this fancy peach Melba dessert, which is actually quite good. They just took a piece of Melba toast, which is nothing by itself. But then they put some French vanilla ice cream on top. Then they put some fresh sliced peaches on top and this hot raspberry sauce drizzled over the top of it. And it was just amazing. And I got thinking, how could I make that into a bagel? And I've got it. So come into the kitchen. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to give you the recipe right now. And then we'll go in the kitchen and you can watch as I do it. You're going to love this. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Hit that like, subscribe, and notify buttons. Enjoy it. And please let me know what you think. I think it's a great idea. You can do all kinds of combinations. Okay, so the recipe is really simple. Bagels are very easy to make as far as the ingredients. We're going to start with 3/4 cups of water. Remember, it's got to be between 100 and 110 degrees. You're going to get your temperature probe out because you're going to need it. We're going to use 1 3/4 teaspoons of yeast, 2 cups of bread flour, and 1 tablespoon of light or dark brown sugar. It doesn't matter, but if you use dark brown sugar, it's able to make your bagels a little darker. But flavor won't make a difference. We're also going to use a teaspoon of plain old regular white table salt. That's it. Now, let's go in the kitchen and I'll show you how it's done. This is going to be so cool. I can't wait till you see how it comes out. Okay, first thing you're going to start with, remember, you're going to bloom your yeast. So I have a bowl here with 3/4 cups of water. It is 106 degrees. That's not too warm. It should be between 100 and 110 degrees. I'm going to take a tablespoon of brown sugar because yeasties like it. It can be heaping. You want this a little sweet. Now mix it all up until it dissolves a little bit. And then we're going to take 1 3/4 teaspoons. This is a half teaspoon, so we're going to go 1, 2, that makes a whole teaspoon. And then this is a 1/4 teaspoon. We need 3/4, so 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to stir it up. Now, you're putting the sugar in there because the yeast like the sugar. And it's their favorite food. Take a plate or some plastic wrap, whatever. I'm using a plate. Cover it up. Set it aside. Now, remember, we're going to have 2 different bowls of flour. We need 2 cups of flour. As I said, I'm using bread flour here because the protein count is 1 higher, and that helps develop the gluten, which makes it a chewy bagel on the inside and crunchy on the outside. There is 1 cup here in 1 bowl. Do not pack your flour, just gently scoop it out. Got to be level though. Then take your second bowl, 1 more cup of flour. Set that aside. Now you have 2 cups of flour. 1 here, 1 here. One is going to be set aside because we're going to put our salt in that and all that jazz. This one is the one that we're going to mix with our water and yeast. Now, we're putting extract, which has a little bit of alcohol in it, so we're going to put that in with the salt because I don't know how it's going to react with the yeast. So this is the one with the salt. I want it really, really, really strong flavored vanilla, so I'm going to say 2 tablespoons, I think. Do not use imitation vanilla. It won't come out right. Imitation vanilla is garbage. It's all alcohol and artificial flavoring. This is actual vanilla extract. There's 2. The alcohol will, of course, cook out. We're going to mix that up a little bit. Next, we are going to take, this is molasses. Now, true New York bagels are made with barley malt, but I couldn't get any, and I don't really like the flavor anyways. I like the molasses better because it's a little less sweet, and I don't like the malt flavor, really. So I'm using blackstrap molasses. If you want to, you could even use honey, but you need it to give it a certain extra taste. I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of that. Again, we're putting that in with our flour and our vanilla extract. You don't have to stir it up, but you can scoop it off the spoon to make sure you get it all in there. All right, in the same bowl with your molasses, your extract, and your plain flour, we are going to put in 1 teaspoon of salt. There's a 1/2 teaspoon. There's a full one. I know it sounds strange with salt in something that's going to be sweet, but actually it helps the bagel rise, and it also brings up the flavor of the peach and all the other flavors that are going to be in it. Then we're going to set this aside. Now we're going to take our other bowl here, the other cup of flour. There's nothing else in it, just flour. And we're going to mix that in. And then we're going to mix our yeast into that. Okay, next, look at your yeast. It should be nice and foamy. And what we're going to do is just pour the other cup of flour. This is just plain flour. This is also something yeasties like. And then you're going to mix this up until it's almost like a pancake consistency. You don't want any dry flour in there still. You want to mix it up so it's got this muddy-like slurry. Like I said, like pancakes. If it gets lumpy, just keep mixing it until the lumps come out of it. That's because of your yeast. Your yeast is binding the proteins together and it's creating gluten already because you're adding flour to it. Just mix it up. Like I said, till you got pancake batter. And then set this aside. Now, you've got your water in, you've got your yeast in, you've got your 2 cups of flour. The only thing you need is a tablespoon of sugar. For the peach, you're going to take the tea that you brewed and you're going to heat it up. This is 101.3, so it's perfect. We're going to add a tablespoon of brown sugar. Remember? Food for the yeasties. Then we're going to use 1 3/4 teaspoons. This is 1/4, so we'll use 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 teaspoon. And 1, 2, 3/4. Again, we're going to mix this up real nice. Don't slobber like I do. I can't help it. It's just me. I'm a slob when I work, and there's no getting around it. Okay, so we have our yeast, we have our peach-flavored tea, and we have a tablespoon of brown sugar. We're going to cover that up. Remember, the water's got to be between 100 and 110 degrees. We're going to set that aside. Now, next, remember the red bowl? We have just flour in here. Again, it's bread flour. We're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. So, do 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I said, it lifts the flavor and makes the peach pop. Then we're going to take this one and we are going to set this aside. Next, we're going to take this one and we are going to put a tablespoon of brown sugar in there. And we're going to mix it up. I know we already put one in the yeast, but these are going to be sweet bagels and we want a little extra sugar in them. We're going to mix this really well. See, in a minute we're going to check our yeast. Before we do that, we're going to back to the bowl with the flour and the salt. And we're going to add our tablespoon of molasses. It's a little over, it doesn't matter, but you know, don't get carried away because you'll mess it up, and if you get too much moisture in it, it really screws up your bagels. Clean it out real well. So we have salt, flour, and molasses. The other bowl, we have our sugar and our flour. And then we're going to check our yeast mixture. Beautiful, isn't it? See, it's nice and foamy. So we're going to take the flour and the sugar and we're going to mix the yeast in with that. Scrape it all out so you get all of your yeast. And then mix this. Again, like I said, it's going to turn into kind of like mud, a slurry, but that's all right. It's supposed to do that. When we add the other flour, it'll fix it right up. Now see, this looks like it did in the other one because there's a lot of moisture and only half the flour. There. Now when it looks like this, set that aside. And you're going to mix in all of this right here into your bowl. You got to add the salt and all the toxic things, not toxic, but the things that yeast don't like, you put them in last so they get diluted by the flour and it doesn't kill your yeast. Keep mixing this till it gets craggy. And flour. A little bit of brown sugar. Won't hurt, a little ball of it. Now, when you see it's getting really hard to mix, stop. Put that aside and then dump it out onto your bench. Counter, whatever you want to call it. Have it call it a bench, I guess. Now we're going to start kneading it. We're going to knead it until all this extra flour has worked into the dough. And of course it'll get drier. Keep folding your dough in on it. I can smell the molasses in it. This is going to be so good. I can't wait to try this. I hope you guys try it too. It's really cool. I think you're going to love it. It's a great idea too, I think. If I say so myself. Maybe I'll start something new. You never know. Papa Mark's New York style peach Melba bagels. How do you like that mouthful? That's a mouthful, ain't it? Let's collect all the flour that's on there. It said you're going to need this for a good 10 minutes. It'll get less sticky and very smooth. Be really nice. You'll like it. And with the peach flavoring, that ought to really just top it right off. It's a little sticky. I'll wipe the bowl out because there's a lot of flour that got left in there, I guess. Yeah, it did, didn't it? But don't add more. Just take it out of the bowl. If you got some in the bowl, use that. And just keep kneading it. As you can see, it's been 5 minutes, almost 10 minutes since I've been doing this. I just didn't want to make you watch. But as you can see, the dough is getting nice and smooth now. See how that is? That's what you want. So at this point, you're going to form it into a ball, just like the other one. Pretty little ball. You get your cooking spray. And you're going to take your bowl, spray, drop your dough in there, and then again cover it up. Again, cover it up. Like I said, plate on top, optional, you don't have to. And then set this one aside. Okay, you're going to take your raspberry tea that you made. You're going to, again, add a tablespoon of brown sugar. And you're going to add 1 3/4 teaspoons of yeast. Stir it up. Cover it up and set that aside. Next, you're going to get 1 cup of flour in one bowl and 1 cup of flour in the other bowl. You're going to add your salt too, so we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. It's a half teaspoon, so we're going to go 1 teaspoon. We're going to add tablespoon of molasses. Whoops. Told you I was a slob. Don't do what I do. Try not to be a slob. Try and work neat. I just gave up a long time ago because I'm a slob. I just resign myself. I'm going to have to clean up afterwards. Set that aside. And then in the other bowl, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. So you have 1 cup of flour here and brown sugar. 1 cup of flour here, and a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of molasses. That's everything that your bagels are going to need, except for the yeast and the water, and that's over there. We're going to check that in just a minute. Make sure you get everything out of your spoons. And as you see, our yeast is ready. So we are going to dump that in here. Remember, salt and yeast don't like each other, so don't dump that one in with the salt. You have to mix it first, then you're going to add that to your salty mixture. And just mix this up again. You're going to mix it until you got a mud or a slurry. Again, you can use, at this point, if you want to use an electric mixer, you can. But once you start forming your dough, it's going to get so stiff that it'll burn the motor of your mixer out. So you wouldn't want to do that. But right now you can, but it's just, to me, it's not worth the trouble to bother with it. We're going to take this, and we're going to add it to our flour and salt mixture and our molasses for the final mixing. Put that aside. And like I said, now it's time to mix this until it gets craggy. I like that word. All right, see it? Nice, it's mixing together. God, this raspberry smells amazing. At this point, dump it out on your bench. Dump all the flour out. If you see any kind of, I don't have to scrape it out, but you know, get as much as you can. and start folding it and kneading it. Like I said, it's going to be sticky in the beginning a little bit, but it will go away as you knead it. And we keep kneading it until all the dry flour is kneaded into the dough. Just keep kneading it, and the sticky will go away. If your hands are really sticky, you can run them under the faucet a little bit, but the extra water is going to make the dough even stickier. So just deal with it. It will stop, I promise. After a while, it'll start pulling all the dough off your hands. Like that. And like I said, 10 minutes. Keep doing that for about 10 minutes. Last time I did it for about 8. Okay. So I'll be back in 10 minutes. Like I said, you're going to keep folding it in on each other. It'll pick up any flour that you dumped out of the bowl. And as you keep folding it and kneading it, you form your protein and your gluten strands, and it stops getting sticky. Like I said, you're going to do this for about 10 minutes, so don't rush it. If you rush it, your bagels won't come out right. If you take your time and you pay attention to what you're doing, they'll come out perfect. Oh yeah. Thought this dough was going to be red with the color of that tea. I'm surprised it's brown. Smells amazing though. Any event, I'm not going to make you watch me knead this for 10 minutes. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Now we are back with our vanilla dough. We're going to check it. Look at that. That's beautiful. That's just what we want. Doubles in size. We're going to dump this out on our bench. Now I know this sounds counterproductive, but now we're going to punch the air out of it. You can also beat all your hostilities out. Guy at work pisses you off. Take it out of the dough. You're going to flatten this, and you're going to knead it a little more. Remember, you want it so it's nice and almost dry, but not quite, and nice and smooth. This time you don't have to do it for 10 minutes because you've been kneading it before and it's pretty ready already. Roll it in a bowl. And we're going to set that over here. Don't forget to cover it up. You don't want your bagel dough to dry out. That's a big no-no. And then you're going to go and get the second one that you just did. After that, which is our peach. And the peach, again, has doubled in size. That's just what we want. So we're going to take it out. Punch all the air out of it. Knead it a little more so it's nice and smooth. There. That's beautiful. Now don't get these mixed up because they look about the same color with the molasses in them. Nice and smooth. So we're going to set this one here. And again, we're going to cover it up. And last but not least, we are going to get our raspberry. Let's see. Oh, pretty. Okay. Same as before. We're going to punch the air out of it. I didn't punch it because I don't want to bother my neighbors upstairs or downstairs. Squeeze the air out of it until it's nice and smooth. Form it into a ball. Put it on your counter. Cover it up. Make sure you get it nice and covered up so that no air gets to it. Air gets to your bagel dough and it gets dry. You don't want that because then you'll have a hard crust on the outside. It'll be the wrong kind of crust. You're going to let this sit on the counter for maybe about 5 minutes. Okay, again, we got 1.4, 1.8, 1.5, 1.8, 1.7. At this point, it doesn't really matter if it's exact. You just want them pretty close. Next. Oh no, sorry. And we're going to roll out this one. Again, 3 pieces. One, 2, 2.0, 1.6, 1.4. So we'll pinch a little of this off. 1.6, 1.6, 1.7. That's good. Last one. I'm not going to make you watch while I cut all these, but I'm going to come back in a minute and show you how to braid them all together, and then how to cut the final bagels and how to shape them. So after I get these done, I'll be back. Okay, now for the fun part. You're going to take one of each flavor. You're going to start with your vanilla and roll it out. Nice and thin. Let it stretch a little. It's going to spring back because of the gluten, but again, that's okay. This is your peach. And here we go. Start with your vanilla. You have your raspberry and your peach. Let's put the peach underneath. And you're going to braid it just like you would hair. Just like that. Pinch it at the end. And we're going to set it right here for now. Then we're going to do the same thing with all the rest of them. I'll do a couple more so you can see them. There. Plain. Raspberry and peach. You can absolutely roll them on the counter if you want. Helps. If it's too long, it's okay because they're going to spring back up on you anyways. Put your white one in the middle. Raspberry on top. Peach on the bottom. And braid. Over, under, over, under, under, over. If you screw it up, it doesn't really matter. And you get your pretty little braid like that. We'll do one more, just in case. There. Stretch out our plain, or our vanilla. I guess I'd call it a plain because it's not. Vanilla and plain are not the same thing. Plain bagels do not have any vanilla flavoring in them at all. Nothing. They should. The only thing they have in them is barley malt, and that gives it a malty taste, not vanilla. It's rolled out. And peach. Again, raspberry on top, plain in the middle. If you want to, you can punch it down onto the counter. Helps us do it easier, helps us stretch better. Like I said, it's not rocket science. If you screw it up, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can't really screw it up. You're just making a braid out of dough. Okay? There's 3 of them. I'm going to shut the camera off for a minute, and I'm going to whip these together real quick, and then I'll show you how to form them into a round circle, and ta-da, a bagel. So, I'm back. As you see, I braided all these. Now, we're going to let these sit for about maybe 5 minutes or so with plastic on top of them to keep them nice and moist. And the reason we're going to let them sit is because from braiding the dough, it's kind of tight. So if we let it sit, it'll loosen up a little bit more, and then we can do the final step and form them into actual bagels. I'm going to leave you for a few minutes, and I will check back in about 5 minutes. All right, we are back. Time to form the bagels. This is the fun part. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our pretty braids and we're going to ruin them. So, you're going to make it a circle and fold it around and then roll it so it stays together. Then set it down like that. We're going to do 2 across. You want to stretch them a little bit because you don't want the hole to close up in the middle. That may ruin the braiding, but that's okay. Wrap it around. Make sure you wrap this nice and tight and seal it up really well. You don't want it to come apart when you boil it. That's a real pain in the neck when it happens, and it ruins your bagels. Stretch, form. Make sure these are nice and stuck together, like I said. Roll. Remember, bagels should be round. So if your bagels aren't round, do it again. If they don't come out quite right for you, don't freak out. They're still going to taste delicious, and nobody's perfect. It takes a lot of practice to do this. Like I said, I used to make bagels. We didn't make them by hand, but we had a machine that did it. But sometimes you had to do this. If they shrink up a little like this, like I said, go ahead and pick them up, stretch them. You are going to stretch them again before you cook them, so don't get too panicky. Give it a light little spray of oven cooking spray and cover them up. Remember, the enemy of bagels is drying out. Cover these up. And then you're going to put them in your refrigerator. We're going to put them in there overnight. What that does is the cold slows down the yeast process and retards them so they don't get too puffy. And it helps the dough ferment. Gives it a nice flavor. So we'll put these in here, and then we'll check back in the morning, and then we'll cook them. Okay, viewers, we are back. It's been 24 hours. As you see, our bagels are nice and proofed. If they're a little puffy, that's okay. What we're going to do, pick them up and just stretch them a little bit so the hole's nice and big. This way you don't have a big solid bagel. You don't want that. You want a nice pretty hole in the middle. Alright, that one's fine. Going to be kind of gentle with them. You don't want to squish them. Just make sure the hole is nice and big. In the meantime, you're going to get a pot of water boiling on your stove, and you're going to preheat your oven 350 degrees. While that heats up, let these sit and warm up a little bit, because if you don't, when you put the cold bagels in the hot water, they're going to ball up like a baseball, and you don't want to do that. You want to keep them in a nice pretty ring with a nice hole in the middle. You're going to get a baking sheet ready and spray it with a very light coating of cooking spray. Normally you wouldn't do that, but I'm not using cornmeal on the bottom, and we don't want these to stick. You can use a plain old cookie sheet or baking sheet if you want, it doesn't matter. Now we're going to boil the bagels one at a time because I have a relatively small pot here, and if you put cool bagels in a hot pot, it's going to cool the water down too much and they're not going to boil correctly, and you don't want to do that. Just drop them in the water, and each side is going to get 30 seconds. As you see, the water is not boiling quite as profusely as it was before because the bagel dough has cooled down the water just a little bit. Not a big deal, but if you can, try and keep it covered. I'm just leaving it open so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. 30 seconds, and we're going to take this out. Remember, flat side down. And like I said, you're going to put them on a baking sheet, not too close together. Again, you don't want them to stick. After this, pop them in a 350-degree oven. And you're going to let them bake for about 20 minutes to half an hour, roughly. Doesn't matter exactly because you're going to test the temperature with a temperature probe. I'm not going to make you watch while I do the rest of these. I have a dozen of these bagels here, so it's kind of tedious to watch me boil a dozen of them one at a time. So I'm going to shut the camera off, and I'll come back when we're ready to take them out of the oven. Okay, guys, our bagels is out of the oven. These are the ones that we put an egg wash on. As you see, they're a little bit browner and a little shinier, not much. It doesn't really make a difference. The egg wash doesn't give it any flavor, it just gives it a better look. So you don't have to do that. Again, we're going to temp one of our bagels in the fattest part. You can tell just by the way it pops. We're at We are at 190, so these are done. We're going to take these out, and we're going to let them cool just a minute. So, there you have it, folks. Papa Mark's delicious New York-style peach Melba bagels. I hope you try the recipe, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did making them. And if you do try it, please don't forget, leave me a comment. Your feedback is very important. I really want to know what you think of this recipe. You will not find it anywhere else on the internet because I made the recipe right here in my very own little kitchen. So again, like I said, I hope you enjoy them. Don't forget, please like, subscribe, and hit that notify button to see the next video that comes out. And don't forget to leave a comment. Until next time, stay safe, stay warm. Peace.